far right, and or rather the chair reserved for Mr. Michael Lerner. We could...
Give her the 5 minutes.
not Michael Lerner. We could still wait a few minutes, hoping that he would show up, and he's always very welcome, and should he choose to show up another time, we'll make the arrangements and give him the opportunity to debate our other speaker for tonight, Rabbi Meir Kahane. Perhaps I should say a few words first about our guest, Michael Lerner, who chose not to show up, and why it is important to debate Mr. Lerner. Michael Lerner comes from a political background of the far liberal SDS of the 60s, where he was an activist and earned his medals in the primarily anti-social, anti-Jewish activities in the 60s in the SDS. It is important to debate Mr. Lerner, not because of Mr. Lerner in his own right, but because of the kind of values and anti-Jewish ideas that he represents, which masquerade as authentic Jewish values, which need to be exposed and need to be debated because of the kind of damage which today they pose and the threat they pose to the Jewish community and the Jewish nation in Israel as well as in the diaspora. The primary goal that Michael Lerner today advances and the values that he represents are the PLO state, a Palestinian state run by PLO on what he calls the Arab land on the West Bank. His ideas are diametrically opposed to the Jewish values represented by our other guest, Rabbi Meir Kahane. To many of us, Rabbi Meir Kahane does not need introduction. We've known him for years and followed his fortunes and misfortunes. However, to those of us who need an introduction, Rabbi Kahane is the founder of JDL in the 60s. In the 70s, I believe in 71, he moved to Israel. He made Aliyah, where he founded a political party in opposition called Kach International. He became a member of the Knesset, and until 1989, he was the member of Knesset. Today, he is the leader of Kach International. But more importantly, he's the kind of leader who is able single-handedly to summarize the threat which is confronted by the Jewish nation in Israel and in the diaspora. And he's the only one who is able to formulate the kind of platform that transcends the history. It reaches back 3,000 years and projects the Jewish future, into the 1990s and the 20th century. I met Rabbi Kahane personally some 19 years ago. And without making a long speech, I followed his fortunes and misfortunes over the years. And, as I read his books, once I remarked to a friend of mine, perhaps in my own political naivete, that, I'm amazed how Rabbi Kahane grew politically from his days of JDL to becoming a national leader, perhaps a worldwide leader. And then I realized that it was not Rabbi Kahane who grew politically. Rabbi Kahane was always a Kahane. And I can guarantee you Rabbi Kahane always will be a Kahane. what I realized, what dawned on me, that it was I who matured. It was I who grew to the point where I could realize that he was some 20 years ahead of time. Today I realize that he is still ahead of our time. Rabbi Kahane speaks today about the dangers that confront the Jewish nation. He's the kind of visionary with a keen political, analytical mind on the caliber of Zev Jabotinsky and Chaim Weizmann, and he takes off where Jabotinsky left off, and he continues where Jabotinsky stopped, and perhaps where Menachem Begin faltered. With that in mind, may I present our speakers for tonight. Rabbi Meir Kahane will be our first speaker, and hoping that Michael Lerner may still show up, we'll respond with Michael Lerner. Thank you.
In the fall 1969 issue of Judaism magazine, published by the AJC, the American Jewish Congress, the following words were written by a Jew. The Jewish community is racist, internally corrupt, and an apologist for the worst aspects of American capitalism and imperialism. Black anti-Semitism is a tremendous disgrace to Jews. It is rooted in the concrete fact of oppression by Jews of blacks in the ghetto and earned anti-Semitism. The synagogue as currently established will have to be smashed. The author of those words is not in the room. His name is Michael Lerner. Michael Lerner is a tribute to our insane times. An era that in the words of King Solomon in the book of Proverbs, a generation pure in their eyes, yet not washed of their excrements. An insane era in which an ignoramus with a skull cap and nothing under it babbles Jewish concepts in an arrogance of ignorance that is awesome, and that should win him the Nobel Prize for chutzpah. Lerner is not important in his own right. In saner times, he would have been sitting by himself in a corner. Michael Lerner is important only in the fact that he's not a person but a concept. For there are so many Michael Lerners in these insane times. Some are named Woody Allen. Woody who pecks away at Judaism. Woody Allen, the expert on the Middle East and his problems, having produced the Purple Rose of Cairo. There are so many of these people. What makes Michael Lerner particularly dangerous is the fact that he babbles his Jewish anti-Semitism in the name of Judaism. And his good fortune is that there are people who know less than he does and assume that he knows what he's talking about. And so, in his September-October issue of Tikkun magazine, which unfortunately continues to plague us, he discussed the need to add what he called new relevant sins to the Yom Kippur prayer Al Chetz, the central prayer on Yom Kippur, when we rise and we say al chet for the sin, for this sin and for that sin. So he wishes to add new relevant sin. I don't know what a relevant sin is, as opposed to an irrelevant sin, but